All right, good morning. This is your Sheena Cobra Bradford again with South Metro Democratic Women. And here today, I'd like to welcome candidate running for sheriff, Patrick Labat, and one of our interviewers, a new interviewer with South Metro Democratic Women, Sydney Jakes. And today we're just going to get right into it. We're going to ask a few questions and get to know the new, well, maybe I'm not going to say the new. I'm not going to go ahead and claim it before you get it. But Patrick Labat. And the first question would be, what does the job sheriff entail?
First of all, good morning, and thank you for having me.
Good
A lot
morning.
has changed since we last spoke. The runoff is literally 21 days from today. And so, specifically, as we talk about the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer in the county. Fulton County is the largest county in the state of Georgia of the 159 counties, and so it's considered the high sheriff. Now, constitutionally, you'll hear a lot about this. The sheriff is responsible for running the jails, serving warrants, and then protecting the courts. But the basic foundation for any law enforcement agency is public safety. And so we have to move in a fashion that returns us to that platform. Right now, for the past 12 to 14 years, we have not been focusing on the public safety aspect of it. As you know, there are 15 cities inside Fulton County, and police chiefs all over the county are literally at odds or literally disappointed from the perspective of the engagement of the sheriff's office. And so we have to return back to a day where the sheriff's office actually sets the tone for law enforcement. And so by that, we need to be engaged in our community. We need to really, in this day and age, look at how we rebuild this airplane while we're flying it. And so what I mean by that is a lot of our constituents are talking about police reform, law enforcement reform, and what that looks like. Well, it takes generational change in this case, leadership change for us to start rebuilding that airplane and really focus on community and how we engage in literally uplifting our community and really increasing morale internally. We have to fix ourselves internally so that we can then broaden that conversation.
And so why should the people elect you to the office of Fulton County Sheriff?
Well, that's a great question. And again, as Yoshina knows, I'm from here, born and raised. I am literally, my wife and I live in South Fulton, and it is time for change. And that is what we need to focus on. You know, I'm the retired chief of the City of Atlanta Department of Corrections, where I served really 30 years, but 10 of the last years as chief. You know, for the ones that don't know, I went to Frederick Douglass High School, to Clark Atlanta University, and my matriculation through Clark was a little different than most. I worked 11 at night to 7 in the morning at the jail, and then went to school during the daytime. I obtained my master's degree in public administration while working at the jail. My wife and I have a blended family of 4 kids. And the unique piece about that, and I tell people quite often, is the current administration cannot relate to where we are. See, when my 2 boys leave the house, and they're 21 and 22, when they leave the house, I cringe because I understand what that feeling is of a young parent not knowing where their black son is. And you want to not be a helicopter parent, but we want to move into a space where we've done things at the city jail, for instance, be a part of the community, create an environment where we have our perfect score on our accreditation. So one of the things we were able to do at the city, and this is a great question, and you can compare the two. As chief, we put a great team together. The team was very diverse. Our sheriff's office right now, and I challenge each one of your listeners to go to the Fulton County executive staff website and look at the top 12 leaders inside Fulton County. You will see no diversity. There's not a glass city, glass ceiling, there's a brass ceiling. And so we turn the city jail from a liability into an asset. And those are the kinds of things we can bring to the county.
And what makes you a better candidate
Let me interject
than your
really
opponent?
quick.
I got two questions.
I'm sorry, let me interject really quick. When you say diversity, what do you mean by diversity? And how is that a positive thing versus
so when you look at, and I just finished going to the website, you will see, you'll see, including the sheriff, 13 Black males. Fulton County is a diverse county. In South County, we have a women's facility that's run by the Fulton County Sheriff. Are you telling me internally that there are no strong Black law enforcement female leaders that can help lead the department? And it is a shame that we have created this brass ceiling. We have to recognize that 70% of the Fulton County workforce, be it detention officers, be it deputies, be it administration, are females. And so at what point in this generational change do we give young women, and it doesn't matter what color, young women an opportunity to see somebody that they can aspire to be like, see somebody that they recognize in themselves? And it is absolutely a travesty. And let me be clear, I was raised by a single Black female that didn't take any mess. And so there are very capable young men and women that deserve to be amongst the ranks of executive leadership. And if you look at my track record as chief, you will see nothing but diversity. We have to give opportunities to be a part of our community. And be a part of our community, that means you have to have people that look like you be a part of that workforce. And so, when it comes to work ethic and getting the job done, these are the things that I've been able to do for the last 30 years.
I was simply asking, what makes you a better candidate?
Thank you. And that's a great question. When you look at both of our track records, right? And I'm not talking about the concept of, and let me be clear, I appreciate and applaud the 50 plus years that the incumbent has been in law enforcement, but you look at progressive change. You look at the fact that in 2015 and in 2019, I was named Georgia Jail Association Administrator of the Year. That lends toward this conversation of leadership. And then in that is for the entire state. That's not just for Fulton County, Atlanta proper. We're in a space where I've already begun to meet with different mayors, police chiefs, county commissioners. I get the question all the time. So, well, how are you going to deal with 7 county commissioners? I have to remind people I dealt with 2 mayors and 15 council members. And so the collaborative part of me shows that this is that difference, right? See, I am active, engaged, and many of your constituents understand, where we are with respect to who I am. The county leaders, oftentimes we have to look and see and say to ourselves, who is the sheriff, all right, in Fulton County? And that's because the sheriff is absent. We need to be active and engaged and leading the conversation. I would challenge you to make sure people understand, even when our young men and women were sleeping on the floor in boats inside the jail, as the chief of the city jail less than 3 miles away, I tried to get in touch with the sheriff for over a year to tell him I got 1,000 beds over here. And he insisted on not even having a conversation about that. One of the things about having an ACA or American Correctional Association facility is that there are 362 standards that we have to meet. Those standards allow us to run a humane, safe facility. Those are the things that, the federal judge has said, and I quote, Judge Ray said, whoever is running the facility in South Fulton where a woman has not had a shower in over a month should have trouble sleeping at night. He described the facility as repulsive. Again, what a great opportunity to get a strong female to run that facility. Now, in the next 21 days, watch and see that happen. But a strong female to run a women's facility. They do it all over the state. And so that you have a relationship, if not, we are the sum of our experiences. And so when you have an environment where you have ladies that run the facility, you have a more sensitive, more humane environment. And this is just one of the things that proven leadership is where I am and where I stand on, and the things that we've been able to do for the last 10 years as I was chief. I'm not hearing you, Yoshina.
I'm sorry, I'm trying not to have
Yes, ma'am.
feedback.
Thank
Can you
you.
hear me now?
Okay. So
Okay. So I want to piggyback on one of the things you just mentioned.
I think our
current sheriff has been in office for what? How many years? 50 years?
No, he was.
I'm just kidding.
I know.
I'm just
I know. But it's time for generational change, if you will. And so,
No,
go ahead.
and I agree.
And I agree. And that was my question, is that like the younger generation like myself, when do you feel that it's time to bring in the younger generation to groom us for positions so we don't have more leadership dying in office? And of course, we just lost someone, a great leader recently.
And that's a great question. That is, and that is that, and we lost two great leaders. Let me be clear. I certainly want to offer my condolences to the Lewis family, as well as C.T. Vivian's family, whose son and I are great friends.
Yes.
And these civil rights leaders started when they were young. The interesting part becomes how many times, especially in the political circles, when people say, well, they're too young to lead this conversation. They tried that in when I ran the last time, and I had to remind them that Dr. King was 35 in the midst of a movement, the movement that changed the world. And certainly along with C.T. Vivian and Congressman Lewis at young ages. But we also have the responsibility of being able to mentor and bring along talented leadership. If we can't bring it along, we have to recruit talented leadership. So what I would tell you is sheriffs should be term limited as well. Even the presidency of the United States is term limited. It is not. The sheriff's race should be nonpartisan. It is not. The sheriff serves all the people. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, etc. But to your point directly, we have to recognize talent, proven talent, and then bring this to a close. When I get close to 80 years old, my wife has already told me we'll be on a beach somewhere. Listen, but my job is at 52, and this is what 10 years of proven leadership allows you to do from the city level, which we can translate to the county level. And that is, we have to do a better job of reading tomorrow's newspaper today, so that we can then groom talent, recruit talent, and retain talent. So internally, what happens, and as you know, I've been running for over a year and a half at this point, almost 2 years. And internally, what happens when I took over the City of Atlanta Department of Corrections, it was in trouble then, and the culture begins to eat itself from within. And those things are continuing to happen right now, with thousands of warrants not being served, with temporary protection orders in nearly 500. These things simply are not being done. And so I've always said, as a good leader's responsibility includes looking 6 months, a year down the road, 2 years down the road, so that we can understand these trends of crime. I mean, the sheriff is a chief law enforcement officer in the county. Just in the last month in Atlanta, murders up 240%. And you see no inter cooperative agreements that allow for the fugitive teams, allow for specialized investigators or detectives to help. These are facts, right? The sheriff will tell you that the incumbent will tell you that there are no scandals. There are scandals all over the sheriff's office, to include in the last 18 months, the 5 young men, brown and black young men, that have died in that facility. the reason they ended up changing medical contractors is simply because one death is too many. Let me be clear. And we have to hold people responsible. And so the same things that you see outside, right, with respect to how and what the sheriff is not doing, internally, it is twice as bad. And you know what the sheriff loves to say is, we're doing the best we can do. Well, your best is not good enough at this point. And it is time for a generational change. And here's what I will, and I know how you watch the numbers, Yoshina. Overwhelmingly, close to 100,000 people chose not to vote for the incumbent. It's an air and a spirit of change that involves generational leadership. And this will set the tone. And this is what I want your viewers to know. This will set the tone for the next 8 to 12 years when it comes to law enforcement. And so again, when I get to be closer to 100 than I am, 50, as my mom would say, then it's time for new leadership. And we have that responsibility. There are great people that work at the sheriff's office. Absolutely. Great deputies, great detention officers, great civilian staff, great nursing staff, but they're starving for great leadership. And it's time to make a change.
You gave an example of an issue you noticed and you attempted to provide a solution. What other?
I'm sorry.
No problem. You gave an example.
Okay.
You gave an example of an issue you noticed and attempted to provide a solution. What other issues do you notice at the sheriff's office?
Well, again, the overcrowding at the time, right? It should not have taken COVID-19 to get young misdemeanors, young men and women that were determined not to be a threat to society or to our community released. And so those are the kinds of things we can do on the front end. You're absolutely right, Ms. Jakes. When we talk about solutions, when we talk about how we can partner with our community, and to give you an example, we fed our seniors when I was chief, over 200 seniors, 2 to 3 times a week on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, sometimes the best meal they would have of the day. And so that is part of the solution base and how we move forward. One of the solutions we have to get back to is putting more patrol cars on the street, putting more deputies on the street, closing the gap when it comes to literally our vacancy rate. The sheriff's office for the last year and a half has had over 100 vacancies. And you will hear the incumbents say that is literally one of the things that is happening nationwide. Well, that's not true. Less than 3 miles down the street, I made it a purpose to recruit and retain quality individuals. We had no less every year, and we were held to a higher standard by our city council members. One of the things that we focused on was making sure our vacancies were down. And so I maintained less than 5 positions. But again, let me pivot. And one of the things you asked about is solutions, right? How do we, again, go to this airplane and look at this tool belt we call the use of force? We have to be very proactive about our training, putting additional tools in our tool belt. And one of those things, and I said this very publicly, is that we have to change our mentality from a law enforcement perspective, from this warrior mentality to this guardian mentality. And what that means is, when I first encounter someone, I should not be thinking of what this arrest will take, how this arrest will take place and what it will look like. My solution to that is to add that piece in that tool belt that says, how do we get you home safely? How do we resolve this issue? How do we continue to have a conversation that engages our youth? Right. One of the things I was able to do at the city of Atlanta as well, which we can certainly expand, is create a junior correction academy. And what that means is we literally partnered with the Atlanta Public Schools, and we got those students that were at promise. I don't say at risk, but at promise. And we had a 6-week program that included their parents on several weekends. But this program took these young men and women from the age of 10 all the way to 18 or 19. And sometimes we made exceptions depending on the parents, and it would either go older or younger. But we took them, yes, through the courts, yes, through the jails, yes, through really the homeless shelters. But we also took them to Hartsfield-Jackson. We also took them to Fulton County Airport, right? So that they can see, I often say, into the control towers where many of us have never been. And so as those planes lift off, you can see their hopes and their dreams lift off. And for us, that was about changing a culture. Then also, we also took them to the morgue, because this wasn't a scared straight program. This was a program about choices. And we certainly, they're kids in our county. Look, I'm the only candidate that I know of having talked to the Fulton County School Board chair, the new one, Ms. Bernath, about how do we look beyond where we are right now after the election, after August 12th, when I'm sheriff-elect, and really have thoughtful, meaningful conversations about, in this day of COVID, what that interaction looks like. And then also, how do we engage at a point that the first interaction with law enforcement is not a negative interaction. And we want to be very positive about that.
And what is your view regarding this new policy push of defunding the police?
It's a great question. I do not like the terminology. I have said that repeatedly. I certainly, defund the police is absolutely the wrong approach. In many instances, they're funded. In many instances, most police departments and sheriff's offices are funded below where they need to be. But I do certainly appreciate the conversation around how do we add more services? How do we bring in specialized mental health services so that a person coming into actually doesn't have to come into the facility, that they can be seen on the street and instead of being arrested, start dealing with those mental health issues. The pre-arrest diversionary program, how do we expand that? There are many instances internally in facilities, and we certainly did it, where we have mental health experts that can help those that are in need, right? By the time a person ends up from a mental perspective coming into a facility, most of the time they've deteriorated to a point that they need some stabilization. So how do we do that on the front end? And so I do not like the term, but I understand the plight, if that makes sense. I want to move into a space where most counties and most cities should increase the funding around services that all of the people have been clamoring about. One of the biggest issues, especially for young folks, is that we teach them to ask why. But as their parents, we get mad when they ask why. So we have to do a better job of listening, right? We have these young folks are hurting right now. And I certainly believe in peaceful protesting, right? We got two shining examples of what can be done through certainly our losses over the weekend of two great civil rights leaders. But when it gets to looting, when it comes to looting, when it comes to breaking the law, the sheriff's office needs to be not as described by the sheriff as second responders. We need to be first responders, and we need to really focus on that.
Is there any highlight?
We're getting ready to.
We got two.
Go ahead, Sydney.
Go ahead, Sydney. What were you
I was just going to say, is there anything else you wanted to highlight as to why he should be elected?
Well, first of all, thank you again. It's time for change. All right. People recognize that. People understand that we have come a long way and have gotten very few results. You hear people say all the time, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. The one thing that, if anybody's known me longer than 5 minutes, they know I'm very responsive. The sheriff's office has been absent in our community, and it's time for that to change. We need leadership that's active, engaged, bold, accountable, and transparent. Look, and Yoshina, you know this, and my wife hates this, but I give out my phone number, right? If anybody needs me, they can call me. They can call me at 404 859-0237, both before I become sheriff and even after. I will keep that number. And I say that because it was never unusual for a mother or single dad or dad, period, anybody to reach out to me late on a Friday night because their child was in trouble. And sometimes, and we're not talking about the good trouble, right? Sometimes people get scared. We have to remind individuals when someone gets arrested, we arrest their family. We arrest mom and them, uncle and them, dad and them. And sometimes for people that have not, and I'm not talking about career criminals, right? I'm talking about people that need help. And now it is understood. Let me be clear, because of the way my command staff was developed and part of the community. You might have several other people you want to call before you call me, because if you call me, that means somebody's not doing their job, and that means that one thing is going to happen. You notice about me, I'm going to hold people accountable, and we're going to make sure that we revise the sheriff's office with one singular moment and one singular philosophy, a core philosophy that surrounds customer service. See, if we focus on customer service, that in and of itself will embrace any remaining strategies that come along. And so we have to get back to that. We have to be, and I'm encouraging your people, your viewers, to come out and really vote for change. We are far too long in the same situation. So again, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I want to say thank you to you.
And I'm
gonna have to piggyback because I want to always make sure everyone gets good information. So on one of the things that I know when Sydney asked about defunding the police, I just have one question for people who are getting information saying that the police is being funded with millions and millions of dollars. So not to defund, where are the funds actually going? Are they being mismanaged, or I guess, how do you, to understand the public or the citizens when they say they should not have that much money, but you're saying it's more money that needs to be required. Can you kind of explain the reason why?
So what I'm suggesting to you is that of any budget, right? And as you know, with businesses, 80% of the budget is going to be salaries anyway, right? And so we have to focus on the fact that we should, and I say this very publicly, right? In order to achieve diversity, in order to achieve community relationships, we also need to pay our teams enough to be able to live where they serve. And so that is oftentimes difficult. And when you have a sheriff's office that is as underpaid as the Fulton County Sheriff's Office has been in the past, then we need to focus on how do we, again, that affects recruiting, that affects retention. How do we put those monies in the proper places? And so when you look at, remember the conversation where the county commission was going to dedicate millions of dollars to building COVID cells at the facility, right? Well, again, the sheriff's absent. So you may not need all of that money, but you may need to make sure your people are properly equipped. Look, I absolutely applaud our young entertainers that are coming and donating thousands and thousands of masks, right, as an example. But my opinion is the sheriff should already have those things. You should be front and center in those conversations, fighting for what you need. And so one of the things that I will do, and this is the unique opportunity we have, keep in mind, I become sheriff-elect August 12th. So I am going to give my wife some of her time back. So starting in September, we literally will start with a forensic audit of where we are with the sheriff's office, what that looks like, how we can be very transparent and thoughtful about every single dime that the sheriff office spends. And so where we need more, we'll ask for more. Where we need less, we will be very responsible and thoughtful about how we provide bigger and better services. Let me give you an example, right? On May 28th, if I'm not mistaken, the night that the city erupted, all right, which was a Friday, you notice it was noticeable that the sheriff's office was absent. And so in that, and these are facts, let me be clear. So I actually had an open records request filed to see what time the law enforcement division clocked out. Every single person in the law enforcement division clocked out around 3 o'clock. It was not until the Clayton County Sheriff's Office showed up in downtown Atlanta that the incumbent made a decision to try and bring back, again, not being progressive or thinking ahead of time, trying to bring back that particular team. And so we need more transparency when it comes to the sheriff's office. We need people that are willing to sit down and have this conversation. You know, we have to work collaboratively. I've had mayors across the county say, look, I call the sheriff, I can't get a call back, right? We're talking about mayors. For 10 years, I sat as the chief at the City of Atlanta Department of Corrections, and where the incumbent and I used to go to lunch once a year and talk about business. The last year and a half, I begged to have a sit-down meeting just so we could get people off the floor, right? It is one thing that to have a county manager, and I certainly respect Dick Anderson, fight for the things that internally should be happening with respect to the county. It's another thing to have a sheriff have an actual conversation publicly and privately about how we better the county, how we better provide services. And so it's very telling, right? Going back to what we mentioned earlier, it's very telling that overwhelmingly 170,000 people, the record numbers that voted, the majority voted for change. It's an opportunity for us to create transparency, active and engaged leadership, and it's proven leadership. This is not fly by night. This is, one of the things that I ask people to do, certainly, is take an opportunity to visit my website, labatforsheriff.com, and really hold me accountable. Go through there, understand some of the things that we've been able to do, understand the differences between me and the incumbent, understand how a law enforcement agency should work as we are very progressive from that perspective, as well as visit us, please, on all our social media. You will find that whether we're passing out food to families or really holding town halls, which, by the way, I invite all of your viewers on Sunday. This past Sunday, we had a great town hall at Labat for Sheriff, and that was with our community leaders, not just our council members. But certainly, we'd love to have each of you on as a guest in the next 3 weeks. And so we want to hear what the community wants, and that's different, right? And it's time for different leadership. So again, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on. And the interview to me was just insightful. We need to make sure that our citizens and the public know who they're voting for. And I really appreciate you again. Running for Sheriff, Patrick Labat, interviewer Sydney Jakes with South Metro Democratic Women. And on behalf of South Metro Democratic Women, we thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.